Hello and welcome once again to The Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to tell your friends. They can like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. The spring parliamentary session is over. It's now wrapped up. To look back on it, to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, is the crew once again. Tom Kmiec, he's the Member of Parliament for Calgary Shepherd, and also Kelly McCauley, the Member of Parliament for the Edmonton Mall. Thanks very much for coming on, guys.
Edmonton West.
Edmonton West.
Mall.
Sorry, I apologize. It was an interesting parliamentary session coming back in January and just wrapping up in June.
It was. You know, every week from my office, we put out a newsletter, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we always struggle to find a good. There's always lots bad and ugly under the Trudeau Jagmeet Singh regime. And today we're going to do a end of session wrap up with the spring's good, bad, and ugly.
All right, since you do the newsletter, you can kick it off. Let's start with the good. Might as well start on a positive.
The good is the polling numbers showing popularity of the Conservative Party. Pierre Poilievre, our leader, winning across many demographics, young, middle-aged, myself, the old. Okay, young and old like myself. But just great numbers, people very positively responding to our message of hope, of change. And we're seeing that across the country as well when the leader goes out to do some of his rallies.
Yeah. Well, we're up 20% of the polls, depending which poll you look at. So it varies from 14 to 20. Too. It's consistent, yeah, across all demographics. But the biggest change since 2015, for anyone who's a conservative and is wondering about the young people, is, are young people actually turn around? They are, because the housing situation is so bad, rent is so high, groceries are expensive, and career opportunities are shrinking. So even in that demographic, they're doing a lot. We're doing a lot better. So 1 in 5 now, young people under 29 is saying they're going to vote Liberal, and then a huge chunk of them, 31%, which is 1 in 3, is saying they're going to vote Conservative. That's unheard of since 2015. We've never had it where so many young people, the biggest group is saying they'll choose the Conservatives over anyone else. So these are usually amongst decided voters. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal.
I think these left of center parties have just gone too far, right? Look at what we're talking about, the housing, especially in British Columbia. If you look at our poll numbers in British Columbia, they are looking better than I've seen in recent memory. Yeah. The addictions, the mental health, the affordability, it just all comes together.
Yeah. I've been door knocking in places like Burnaby, New Westminster. I've done North Vancouver, West Vancouver over the past few months. And it's incredible. You find a lot more people who say things like, I voted Liberal in the past. I'm not voting for them again. I'm going to vote Conservative. And then many times I find their kids are home. And I mean kids, I mean like 25-year-olds who are still at home and they can't afford like a $4 million house in North Vancouver. That would be on the low end. And they're saying, I can't move out from my parents' home because the housing prices are just ridiculous. I would have to move to, then they say things like Abbotsford or Maple Ridge, way out. And that's just the Vancouver region. And that's far. And if you're working somewhere in Richmond, you're talking an hour drive to work, an hour and a half. So then it's like GTA. If you move to Vancouver or you live in Vancouver, that is not the expectation you had when you were growing up, but it is the reality you have today. And then rent is absolutely ridiculous. It's doubled since 2015, and it's reflected now in our polling numbers and how many people come to the rallies and want to meet Pierre personally. And he has a rule. He stays at every single rally until the very end and meets every single person that wants to shake hands with him and tell them their story and hear them out. That's unheard of. No other leader in Canada does that right now or has done it before. And again, the polling numbers reflect it. We're up 20 points in the polls. And it doesn't matter what the Liberals do. I think many Canadians simply don't trust. They don't trust Justin Trudeau. They don't trust Jagmeet Singh. They want someone who's authentic, and you get that in spades with Pierre Poilievre.
All right, we have cut one all queued up here. So this is, as you were just talking about, the crowds kind of reflected a wide group, a swath of people, young, old.
This is Nanaimo.
This is Nanaimo, so this is like a stronghold here.
So the thing about Nanaimo is this is a riding that historically, a long time ago, we were very competitive in it. And then the Greens and the NDP started to make into a left-wing stronghold and kind of trading that seat between themselves. And today, you have this many people wanting to come out, sometimes on weekdays, which is a work day. And our supporters, they work. They work shift jobs, they work day jobs, they work evening shifts. They don't have time to come out to these things, and they're making it a time to come out. So our candidate there, Tamara, is doing a lot better than I think many people.
And we're seeing this across the country. Like the leader will go into liberal, long-held liberal ridings and get 2,000 people.
Yeah.
Like it's remarkable, unseen.
Yeah, places that haven't seen a conservative in a long time.
No,
right?
and getting 2,000, and then Trudeau will show up and get 50 people.
But now they're in desperation mode. The government's in clear desperation mode. We have that clip. We're going to queue up cut 2 here. This is Trudeau at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference in Calgary. So this is elected mayors, probably CAOs.
And these are generally very left-leaning
For the most part,
organizations and cities.
So let's play cut 2.
We're dropping inflation and we're being there for Canadians, not with cuts and austerity, and we're going to keep doing that. And on the carbon price, it actually puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadian families. That's a parliamentary budget officer who says that. It's absolutely true.
I don't know what that laugh was.
I don't know, but I had a shiver go down my spine.
It was weird, and he's obviously taking heat from people who he thinks should be on his side, and like he's done with other people, young people. He takes their votes for granted. He's taking a lot of voters for granted, and even in Calgary, Federation of Canadian Municipalities would usually give him an easy time, and you could see he's nervous there. And that odd laugh at the very end when after he spiels out all these numbers are completely untrue, based on the government's own numbers, not the PBO's numbers, like he likes to say. And he's obviously, he knows he's losing. He knows he's on the back foot. And again, polls reflected. He reads the same polls we do. I'm sure his polling numbers internally are even worse.
And even his answer, that's a partisan answer, and it kind of a non-part.
Well, this is the funny thing. Well, the thing about his carbon tax, he sits there to the cities who have to pay the carbon tax.
Yeah,
the school boards have to pay the carbon tax. They've written to us asking to be exempted from the carbon tax, and he's telling the cities and the school boards how much better they are, or better off they are under the carbon tax. It's not true.
They're not buying it anymore.
Schools, municipalities do not get rebates.
That's right.
They pay out of their budget.
Yeah, I'm sure the mayors and councillors are hearing all about affordability crisis too. So that's reflected in that.
Yep.
Are we good to move on, or did anyone want to add on to that? All right, the bad, Mr. McCauley.
Well, the bad is the corruption issues going on, the procurement issues. We've seen many typical Liberal issues. We've seen many this year. Of course, the big one, Arrive Can, or as we call it, Arrive Scam, where the government spent $60 million to develop an app that didn't work for people returning into Canada. And we found out tens of millions went to IT contractors who did no work on the project, who then subcontracted it out to big corporations to do the work. One of them from GC Strategies had their house raided by the RCMP. Another big scandal, McKinsey. Great friends of the Liberals, used to be run by Trudeau's friend Dominic Barton. We found sole source contracts, the government actually violating contracting rules in order to give work to McKinsey, sole sourcing. Actually, after putting out the bid for tender, changing the rules so that only McKinsey could bid and win. And of course, the big one, the Green Slush Fund, where I think Tom will...
The Green Slush Fund is terrible. Like, even have civil servants, bureaucrats talking amongst each other in these emails that were released saying this is sponsorship scandal level of misspending and corruption. And for those who don't remember the sponsorship scandal, that was the big issue that brought down the Paul Martin, Jean Chrétien Liberal government. And that was famously the Federal Accountability Act, which was Bill 1 of the Stephen Harper government, was to clean up all the corruption related to advertising dollars being spent in the province of Quebec on promoting the Federation and federalism. So that was misused by the Liberals for partisan gain. And now the Green Slush Fund today, in really brief, it was a fund which has the acronym is SDTC. It's meant for like green technology. And now it turns out that the board members on it, in something almost in 100 decisions, they had an open conflict of interest they knew about and participated in decision making to give their own companies money. The chair actually gave her company, while she was sitting at the table, $217,000. That same Green Slush Fund in 2017 was not a slush fund. It got a clean bill of health from the Auditor General. Jim Balsillie was the chair. There was a Calgarian who was kind of the CEO of the organization. What did the Liberals do? They bumped them. They replaced them immediately. Within 3 days, they got a new chair. They bring in their new chair. Yeah, and the corruption begins
linked to
immediately.
the Trudeau Foundation, no
Absolutely. And $123 million the Auditor General now found was corruptly given out to companies where their board members own the companies. And there was a senior government official in the room for every single one of those decisions. So instead of fixing the problem and trying to save the fund, the government's basically admitted, yeah, there was a ton of corruption. We don't know what to do. They've taken the fund and rolled it into somewhere else, which means they're probably going to fire the board members, get rid of all the evidence, and try to dump it as fast as possible, which is why we Conservatives have successfully passed a motion calling for all of the documents to be released and provided to Parliament and then referred to the RCMP as well. Like things like that, this is an obvious example of corruption. $1 billion fund, 123 openly given corruptly, but then in the details in the AGU report, it shows up to $400 million. There was a possible conflict of interest or an undeclared conflict of interest. So possibly 400 million out of a $1 billion fund was corruptly given out to companies the board members own, and these board members were all appointed by the Liberals. The chair was hand-picked, Anne Verschaeren, hand-picked in 3 days by the Liberals, replacing Jim Balsillie, who many Canadians know, and he has a track record that is pretty clean running this fund, because even the AG agreed with him. Like it's textbook Liberal corruption, textbook Liberal arrogance. And only the Liberals could make fighting climate change and their environmental agenda require Liberal corruption to get it done. Like the two go hand in hand when it comes to Liberals and Justin Trudeau.
Well, don't forget the Infrastructure Bank and all the others that haven't actually done it.
The Auditor General's done a lot of work this year on Liberal corruption. She did a report on the green subsidies where they found $7.4 billion had gone out the door without any due diligence, without even seeing if the companies actually were eligible for the subsidy, and then without ever seeing if there was going to be any carbon reduction from the $7.4 billion. Her report on ArriveCan, she commented was the worst record keeping she'd ever seen in all government work, period. And then again with McKinsey, she very clearly points out rules were violated, rules changed just to accommodate Liberal-friendly McKinsey. $120 million went out the door to McKinsey, $60 million with ArriveCan, hundreds of millions with the Green Slush Fund. Every time you think it can't get worse with corruption with the Liberals, along they come saying, hold my beer, here's a new one. And they
seem to get away with it.
They
That's
outperformed my expectations this year with their level of ineptness and corruption. So, and that's our bad of the year.
Bad.
Yeah, it just keeps getting worse. But they just don't seem to care.
No.
They just don't see. It's unbelievable. All right, the ugly.
The ugly housing, the housing crisis in the country. Realtor.ca just came out with information. Rent has now gone up 9% from May over last year. Across the country, even Edmonton, the prairie provinces, which have been spared so far from the rent crisis, we're seeing 16% increase in Saskatoon, 15% in Edmonton. And then on the housing front, obviously the pricing is insane, but CMHC, the Canada Mortgage and Housing, has come out with some statistics that almost half of all mortgages are coming up for renewal this year, 2024 and 2025. We're going to see huge rate hikes. They're predicting $15 billion in added interest payments.
Wow.
That's $15 billion taking away from spending power.
And food bank usage is at the highest rate ever.
2 million people visiting a food bank.
Yeah.
What they're saying is CMHC has said it's going to be a 5% hit to the average Canadian pocketbook who has an outstanding mortgage. So literally just 5% of your spending power before all Trudeau's inflation, before carbon tax increases, 5% just from your mortgage wiped out of your available spending.
That's if you have a mortgage. A lot of young people can't afford to even get the down payment. So if you look at wage growth increase, it's not keeping up. So if you go back to 2015 and you go to last year in September, you got a 24.4% real wage growth increase during that time. But housing prices have way more than doubled. So your down payment is double what it used to be for that average price home. This is not for every single situation. Which means that for the vast majority of people, if your wages went up in real terms by a quarter, let's say just give it a quarter, but the housing doubled, you're hooped. You're not saving fast enough to get a down payment to purchase a home, so you're not getting a mortgage, which means you're renting. And rent is up. Like, I'm a renter, and my rent went about 15% in Calgary. And Calgary rent is going up pretty fast right now because a lot of people have moved to Calgary because, you know, the economy is better than other parts of the country. Housing is still more affordable than other parts, maybe not as much as Edmonton, but it is still better. But in Vancouver, I meet people who are telling me they're paying like $3,500 for a one bedroom. I went to one family, they're paying $6,000 a month for like the first floor of a house. That's an incredible amount of money that you could be using for.
You can never get ahead.
Yeah, you
That's
can.
where you never get
You can.
ahead.
So you're on a treadmill.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back. It's reflected in the polls, but that is ugly. It's ugly. It's an ugly situation when you destroy people's hope that their lives can get better. Because the promise in Canada, and Pierre Poilievre says this all the time, the promise was study hard. You then get a decent job. You know, like the working class gets a job, and then you go and you purchase your first starter home, or you purchase a duplex. Like I lived in a duplex most of my life, or you get that first condo, and then you get onto, you know, the real estate treadmill, and you work your way up into the home that you aspire to be in, and in the community that you aspire to be in. Like those aspirations for a lot of younger people, they are
It's wiped
gone.
out.
It's
Absolutely
hard
gone.
out there, and you can see it when you're door knocking. You see people telling. I've heard this time and time before. They move back in with their parents, or their parents are moving in with the kids, and now you have more multi-generational households than you've had before. Not because of choice, but because they have no choice. Groceries are up, heating is up. You have the carbon tax everywhere across the economy, which is increasing your cost of living monthly. And yeah, it is an ugly situation, economy, and people are right to be angry. There's only one person to blame. You just turn around who's been in charge for the last 9 years. Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, thanks to Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, who sold out in order for him to keep his pension. Like it's obvious what they've done. They're going to hold hostage the entire Canadian population. They won't have an election till October of 2025. And again, it's reflected in the polls, and they're ignoring the polls and the will of Canadians.
Because they're not affected by it.
No, they're not.
They're
No,
affected by
neither
it,
of them
no.
are. Yeah.
No, exactly.
No, the numbers are truly ugly.
Yeah.
We looked at it from, I think the average rent in 2015 when Trudeau took over was $966 for one bedroom. Now it's $2,200. Even accounting for inflation, rent has outgrown like 28% on top of inflation, on top of all the record inflation. And, you know, Trudeau recently commented that, well, housing prices cannot come down because we have to protect the asset value of those who own a home, but we have to create more lower price housing. But it's like, well, we can't have housing prices drop, but we have to have lower housing prices. He's clueless as to the pain he's inflicted, clueless on how to address it. Throw out billions of dollars in spending, and prices just keep going up. And inability to understand that the high spending, the inflationary spending, is forcing up interest rates, which is punishing Canadians. And, you know, the only hope we're going to have is to get that spending down, get inflation down, bring our mortgage rates down.
And they've spent a lot of money, like $94 billion. They keep
are getting
claiming.
better.
Yeah, like
They're not getting better.
it's rare to find a government has spent so much money and achieved so little, except for doubling housing prices, doubling rents. Like we're approaching now debt servicing costs with the federal government is at $54.1 billion annually,
crazy.
which is more than we send to the provinces to partially pay for healthcare. It's double what we spend on national defense. Every single deficit budget this government pushes forward is going to continue to drive up asset prices. It's also pushing out the private sector. And then if people need to are trying to figure where is all this inflation coming from, it's not supply chains.
Nope, it's
like
government.
We build homes out of concrete, which we have ample of in this country. We have lots of land. We have lots of materials to build homes with. It's the federal government, which is continuously overspending. That overspending leads to higher asset prices because those dollars are chasing fewer goods, fewer services. Like it's a unvirtuous circle that we're in right now, and the government doesn't want to get out of it. They're just going to keep feeding this thing, and we're spending
and what was
billions.
the slogan when he got elected in 2015? It was something about the middle class and those working hard. Did you
Yes,
remember
yeah,
this?
that's right.
He's completely decimated the middle class.
What we end up now is Trudeau towns and those working hard not to be in, those homeless encampments. Vancouver, it's up 1/3. It was bad before, up 1/3 in the last couple of years. 256 homeless encampments in Toronto, 50, 60 in Halifax with the housing minister. The housing minister per capita oversees the worst level of homelessness encampments in the country. And their solution is spend more, achieve less.
Another government program.
Yep.
The spending since 2015, last Harper government, this government is 117% spending more than in 2015. We're approaching now where the increase in spending under Justin Trudeau is more than the entire annual budget of the federal government in the last year of the Harper government. Like that's just comparison point. Like they are spending more now in terms of increase in spending for government than the Harper government spent total in 1 year on the government.
Nothing's gotten better.
Yeah, like I know the quality of the services haven't gotten better. Like if your passports are coming to you faster, that's usually a fluke. It's rare for someone to get a passport on time. And all government services have gotten worse. Most of the government is broken at this point, or it's corruptly being given out to crony friends of liberals.
To follow up on that tax increase, the tax grab from Canadians is up 76% from when Harper was in power. Government's collecting 76% more, taking 76% more tax dollars.
And that's power out of the economy, too.
Yeah.
And they still can't balance the budget, and they still can't deliver passports. They still cannot get equipment for our military, cannot reimburse our military for food they have to buy overseas.
And now they want to create new programs that government feds have never been involved in. Right? They're going to jurisdictions. They have no clue what they're doing.
That's right, yeah. And that's what causes the ugliness in the economy. And the economy is people trying to get jobs and get by every single month. And if you're going out, you're seeing the price of homes way up, your rent is going up or really high because you're trying to move up and your groceries are expensive, and your insurance is coming in for renewal and it's higher than it was before. Like, go right back to Justin Trudeau and the Liberal decisions made over the last 9 years. Every single one of those led to this moment today to lead to these higher prices. And you can thank Kmiec Singh as well because he's been voting along with the Liberals every single step of the way.
Time. Singh.
So you can see why it's easy to come up with a bad and ugly every single week. Yeah. We've got 5 or 6, one and then 5 or 6 runner-ups, and then we fight to try to find a good out of the Trudeau-Singh government days in Ottawa.
Well, we've covered the topic, so thank you very much, gentlemen. The guests always get the last words.
I though, will say I'm looking forward to the summer to meeting constituents and going out to other communities in BC especially to meet as many people who are regretting their choices in the past, voting Liberal. And then also looking forward to actually having regular water again in Calgary because we can't have nice things with a left-wing council, a left-wing mayor. Someday we'll have water back in time for Stampede.
Let's hope so. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate your time.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Kelly McCauley, Member of Parliament for Edmonton West, Edmonton Mall. Also Tom Kmiec, Member of Parliament, Calgary Shepherd. Appreciate your time, gentlemen. Thank you for yours as well. Don't forget to tell your friends. They can like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. Great message here talking about the spring session of Parliament and a bit of a wrap-up, a bit of a history of what just happened. They can also download it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. We'll have new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, even throughout the summer. Until next week, remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.